This is the Balance Dilemma. We tackle the often uniquely, but not always, female dilemma, managing life, work, family, and self. I'm Maura Carlin.
And I'm Christie Derrico. At the Balance Dilemma, we speak with women and men to hear their balance stories. Our guests are entrepreneurs, reinventors, creators, executives, parents, and partners, telling us what we really want to know. How the heck did they manage that? And can you have it all and all at the same time?
So, for this episode, which by the way begins our fourth season and is number 63, it's just me and Christie, letting you all listen in to our chats. Christie, it is wonderful to be back on mic with you.
But it's not like we haven't been speaking.
That's true. We talk all the time.
And that's the whole dialogue we're aiming for here: texting, chatting, exchanging, hearing what's up.
And there's so much for us to discuss about the balance dilemma, including our own personally, people generally, and of course, the podcast itself. So let's start with the classic fall question. Christie, tell us about your summer vacation. How was it?
You know, it was just a couple weeks of downtime and a lot of reading. Nothing super eventful, I would say. How about yourself?
Well, it was a lot of sunshine, which I love. I will say my highlight was I went to Paris with my married son. We both left our spouses home, and that's not something you hear about often. I find travel important, but traveling with a married child, like when your kid says, "Want to go to Paris with me?" You say yes.
Oh, you definitely say yes. Well, it's a place I'd love to get to. You know, I've been following one of our former guests' posts, Audrey Henley, who's the head of Amex Travel, and she does a lot with information on what's going on her trips, getting stuck in airports, talking about new lounges. What about the travel experience generally? Has anything changed circa 2023? Is it easy to travel, difficult? I was pretty amazed when I went through England. I did not need to show my passport last year. You
Really?
yes, you did not show your passport. You went right through. And I hear from other seasoned travelers that that's the case. I'm not sure if it's.
Okay, that is not the case with France. I would say we didn't actually have any travel problems. I find it hard booking it. It's just hard to maneuver the sites and find what you want, and you get kicked out of the site. So that's the part that I found hard, but we really didn't have real travel problems.
And I would agree with you. That's one of those bygone things, travel agents, that I wish we could get back, because they were experts in the area, and it just made the whole experience easier. Even if they did have to be paid for it, I didn't have a problem with that.
Is there anything that you wanted to get done this summer that you didn't get done? And I can think of one.
Oh, that's usually an end of the year question, right? Not so much an end of the summer. I really can't think of the negative. All I can say is in the positive. I did tons of reading. I tried to get outside as much as possible. I did not row as much as I usually do in the summer, which is one of my favorite things, because I rode over some rocks and knocked what we call the skeg, or the little thing that directs your boat. I knocked it off and didn't get to repair it. But I read tons of books, which you and I are going to talk about.
I didn't get as far along in my writing as I wanted. Not enough articles and not far enough on the book we hope to write.
But we are moving ahead on that. We're back on track. And I worked with an editor this summer who had me change a manuscript that I'm working on from third person to first person. So that's not really the type of writing I like to do, the editing component. But I do feel a level of success that I'm almost all the way through the entire thing. And I do think that the instructions I was given made the manuscript better.
In the more mundane, I finally caved and started learning pickleball. I'm a racket sport person, so having played tennis and now playing paddle and now adding pickleball, I feel like I'm starting to confuse all the sports. But I've clearly learned enough, because this past weekend we were away with friends, and one group had hired pros to work with the 12 of us, and the pros were a no-show. So my husband and I became the pros and taught everyone how to play. So if you run across a bunch of people who are pretty lousy, I was the teacher.
You know what? That's on my list. Pickleball is all the rage. They even added the lines to my local court here, and it's on my list to learn to do with my husband. So it sounds like a lot of fun to me.
So why don't we before we look at what's coming up this season, let's take a look back on last season. We had some highlights with really amazing guests, some famous, some not. All have interesting, often surprising stories and information. And I just want to start with the show that people listened to the most was our
Tell
second
us.
to last show with Dr. Mary Claire Haver and talking about her Galveston diet and what happens to women's bodies as they age. That seemed to really strike a chord with a lot of our listeners.
Yes, and the alcohol episode, giving up alcohol, was surprisingly popular, and I got a lot of texts from listeners commenting on trying to give up alcohol. Maybe it's an outgrowth of the pandemic that people increase their alcohol intake. And that is something that we have learned through our experts. You need to decrease and not increase as we age for a variety of reasons.
Well, and that a lot of that is the sugar generally, not just alcohol related, and even Dr. Haver's diet, it really is a reduction in sugar.
I
Another
agree.
really popular one. It seems folks want to hear about this medical stuff as we age because we had Dr. Ellen Gendler, who is a well-known board certified dermatologist and now social media star, debunking all kinds of rumors and ideas of things to try that you're going to find anywhere on the internet. And I had requests, when is that going to be up on your podcast sites? We really want to listen. And so a lot of you really wanted to hear about that aging, or some might call anti-aging, and others
It's
don't like
beyond
that term.
sunscreen, as you pointed out.
Well beyond sunscreen, although most dermatologists will tell you the most important thing is sunscreen, and Dr. Gandler can go on and on about what the right ones are and what the wrong ones are.
So you and I love to pass back and forth articles, things we're reading outside of entertaining fiction or nonfiction. And one thing that has been sitting on my desk is this Deloitte Women at Work 2023, A Global Outlook. It's a report they did from a study of some 5,000 working women across 10 countries. And I took a moment to read this, and it was really stunning, their findings, which are so relevant to what we discuss here at The Balanced Dilemma. And I'll just read right from the opening paragraph. Our 2022 report painted a deeply concerning picture. A significant number of women reported experiencing burnout, non-inclusive behaviors in the workplace context, and challenges while hybrid working. And they went on to cite that perhaps this explains why their 2023 report found that more women left their employment in the last 12 months, so within 2023, than in 2020 and 2021 combined. So the things we've been talking about actually haven't gotten better.
So we saying that the pandemic hasn't completely changed everything for on a long-term basis?
No, I don't think so. And it certainly hasn't made things better. And I'm not going to double down on the fine print here, but one of the big findings is we see the news headlines back to work 5 days a week in the office, and headline grabbing dictates like that. And it's cited in this report that it's causing women to go out of certain fields because they believe it's not possible for them to have a proper balance in work life if they are heeding those types of mandates. So I found the report interesting and unfortunately a little upsetting, but it's things we can work on and things we can talk about.
So, along those lines, though, from a personal standpoint, some of what we've learned is there's really not a one size fits all solution. I mean, first of all, there are people who would rather be in the office, and there are people who would like it to be hybrid, and there are people who would like to work from home completely. So whether employers can adopt this flexibility overall, that will be very interesting. I think back to our guest, Emily A. Hay. For those who don't remember, she trains women to start their own social media management businesses. And she is really committed to this idea of flexibility, But as she recognizes, the problem with that flexibility and being the one at home is that you, by default, become the default parent. And it's an interesting dilemma.
Yes, and this report did confirm that women are still bearing the brunt of household responsibilities, which is, the huge unseen burden that makes it so difficult to
Did the
manage
report,
everything.
which I haven't looked at in a while, I confess, talk at all about a shift at all at home? Because, we also spoke to Paul Sullivan, who started the Company of Dads to try to, well, for lead dads to have a community, but also he's trying to lead an effort to actually change some of the structure in the workplace. Did it by any chance talk about that fathers at work were showing that their home life really does exist, if you recall?
I am going to shelve that question until we have our guest who's coming in, PhD Dr. Amy Deal, who wrote Glass Walls, Shattering the 6 Gender Bias Barriers Still Holding Women Back at the Workplace. She's an expert in this area, and you can see she's had a ton of posts commenting on just these kinds of questions. What's really changed? Has anything changed? What we can do better? And I think that bringing light to these topics hopefully will, broaden the discussion and achieve the goals that you and I hope can be achieved.
I think she also talks about gendered ageism, that women are never the right age for success in business. And, that goes along with, the Barbie movie, which we have posted about, that women are never enough. Well, they're also never the right age from a business standpoint. And I'm sure we're going to talk to her about that. We're also going to have, as long as we're talking about upcoming guests, we're going to have Susan Barra Shapiro, who's written many, many books, but also talking about a book on why women cheat in relationships. It's called A Passion for More. That's going to be very interesting.
Yes, I cannot wait we're going to have an event with Susan, aside from having her as a guest on the show. And her newest book is called Maribel's Shadow. And can't wait to meet her and hear about it. But people do love to ask her about, why women stray, and she's become somewhat of an expert on that topic.
We're also working on experts to talk finance for women, marriage and divorce, not necessarily all in the same show, talking to some millennials about how they're managing balance and the mental load. Maybe not as much has changed as we had hoped has changed, as well as talking about aging in the workforce and career shifts, pivots, and new acts.
Well, I just read an article in The Atlantic. Okay, I didn't actually read the whole thing, but I skimmed it, and it's on my list to fully double down on. But the title is Take a Wife, Please. And it says, why are married people happier than the rest of us? Now, there's statistics in here. First of all, the number of 40-year-olds who are married has gone down. It used to be about 6% that weren't married. Now it's like 25%. But basically, for a variety of reasons that she details, being married is good for your health and happiness. But
that's interesting, because the statistics I always read is that it was better for men to be married than for women, and that they live longer.
I was just going to say that you really need to look at it individually between the genders to see if that's true. But that's an interesting through line with what we talk about here at the Balanced Dilemma. And I'm so excited for our guests this season. We've got a full lineup.
We do. And there's always a lot to talk about, like balance versus integration.
Yes, and can you change things and how you change things. But one thing I want to talk about is what we read this summer. You just, since you are our website IT person, Maura, you put up the book list for 2023.
Right. And so anyone who wants to see our full list, it is on our website, thebalanceddilemma.com. Easy to find. It's right up there, and you'll see we've read a whole lot of books, and many of them, were summer reads. Lessons in Chemistry, And I believe that's coming out in a movie too.
I was just in Barnes and Noble, not to do a plug for Barnes and Noble, but I was at one of the stores, which can be so nice when they have the cafe and events going on there. But all of the people working there were wearing lessons in chemistry buttons.
Really?
Yes, and I think the author, I believe it's let's look at
Bonnie
her list.
Garmis.
Bonnie Garmis. She's not a young woman.
Right. And this is her first book, I think?
That's right.
Right.
I believe so. And that's great news to hear that she made such a hit, and this might be something she's done later in life.
What I found so interesting, and I think it was coincidental. We in our non-reading book club read The Other Einstein by Marie Benedict, which will change your view of Albert Einstein, I think, which deals with a woman scientist and how she was treated. And then there was a new book by Kate Zernike, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, called The Exceptions, which deals with women in science in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and beyond. And it was almost like a real life lessons in chemistry.
Right. Women in STEM areas are all the rage, and we certainly want to encourage that. Some other books that I read, The Paris Wife, which was about Ernest Hemingway's first wife, Hadley Richardson. That was a great book. And we read Cider House Rules in the last year as a book club read. I really enjoyed that. You also loved Codename Helene, and I see there's a new book by that author. That looks really good. Then we love Adam Grant, Think Again. He's always a good one. And right now I'm reading Wayward with a W-E instead of a W-A. And that's by Amelia Hart. And that is a great book, historical fiction. I'm enjoying that. What are you reading?
I just finished Hedge, and I don't remember who the author was. And it's a novel, and I enjoyed it. I'm not sure it was happy. And I was by the beach and I read, oh, you're testing me, Christie. It was a book by Jennifer Weiner, but not her most recent. It was the one before that, something about summer. And it was just a light, enjoyable read, as most of her books are.
And sometimes that's what's fun.
Exactly.
And there's a new one by Marie Benedict, I think co-authored again by Victoria Christopher Murray. Is it The First Wives? I think that's the name. It's about, or First Ladies, that might be it. And I'm hearing great things about that too. We really have loved Marie Benedict's books. We've read a few of them in our non-reading book club, which also went to see the Barbie movie as a book club.
Right.
And we loved that. There's so much to talk about there. Even, people, it seems like the emotions on that movie run the gamut.
That's right. That's right. And you and I did not agree about the ending.
Well, I think we're not going to give it away, but that's what people say was something that wasn't expected. And I think it was interesting and unique. And she did a good job.
But, Gloria's speech about women never being enough or never doing enough really struck a chord in pretty much every woman I know.
Yes. And how wonderful to see America Ferrara. Think about when she first came on the scene as a young woman. She's really grown as an actress, and I hope she gets nominated for that monologue. It really was one of the strongest parts of the movie.
There is balance issues being discussed even in TV shows. For anyone who watches the Sex and the City, I don't want to call it a reboot, but and Just Like That, there is a monologue. Charlotte goes back to work. She was the one who always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and she goes back to work, and there is a monologue she has where she just tells her husband he just isn't doing enough when he complains, like, Charlotte, I can't do it all. And she's like, you're barely doing anything.
That takes us back to that article with the list in the pandemic where the wife listed everything she did. They were from, I think, Japan, and the husband was having a lot of fun with a drone. And unfortunately, I think she listed over 200 things she did, and he did less than 20. So those kind of lists.
Well, if you remember, one of our guests, Fran Hauser, talked about how, we do as women sometimes underestimate what our male spouses do. And she would take stock every year about what he did and what she did so that it didn't get overlooked.
Right, because I've been driving around with a low pressure tire for several days. And my poor husband in a business suit had to take out the little thing from the garage and add some air to it. So that is not something on my list that I'm attentive to, and it's certainly bad for the tire. So we do need to take stock of all the contribution from everyone in the house and what they do. So I have to ask you a question, switching gears. What is girl math?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So there have been a whole bunch of TikTok videos and now actually articles where people are making fun of the way women justify their purchases.
Hmm.
And often luxury purchases or unnecessary things, what one would call unnecessary. You can decide whether, for example, a handbag is necessary or not. And they make fun of it, and it is laughed at, and typically some woman is trying to explain that, and some of it is silly. If I buy something for $100 and then I return it and rebuy it and it's $50 less, then I've made $50. Now obviously, we can make fun of that, but they go further and make fun of women who are considering things like cost per wear. Like,
Yes.
will I really use this? Do I want to spend $100 on something I'll use once? But what if I'm going to use it 100 times? Then each time I wear it is $1. In many of these videos, and this is what was part disturbing to me, is a woman's explaining it and you've got men giggling at it. And they're calling it girl math. But really, it's a cost benefit analysis. Is it worth spending the money on this if I'm not going to use it? And so it seems to me to be smart math. You're actually making decisions about whether it's worth it. The same way someone might decide to join a golf club. Where are we going to actually play golf? Might it be helpful for business? Or do I buy the new set of golf clubs? Or do I need the car with all the other extras that I don't really care about? I mean, those are all factors you consider when you are evaluating a purchase. Girl math is basically how women justify purchases.
Got it.
The bigger question, and as you know, I'm writing about this, and why women feel it's necessary to justify their purchases. And there's a historical component to it, and being made to feel that what they want really isn't necessary.
I don't know. Some of these expensive bags,
Well,
but they can be an investment.
Okay, but we can debate that. I don't actually see bags as an investment the way other people do.
Some women do.
They really do. And an argument can be made that a paper bag or a plastic bag functions just as well as a handbag.
I wouldn't go that far.
Okay, so now it's just a matter of figuring out your price, Christie.
That sounds like my girl math. I figure my breaking point. But this brings us to another related topic that's been getting a lot of headlines. What is lazy girl jobs? What are lazy girl jobs?
Well, first of all, let me just say, and this is me, I'm a little tired of the cutesy titles for things. We had quiet quitting, we had, great resignation, the quiet cutting. I don't know if you've heard of that one, where quiet quitting is sort of doing the least, where you're there, you're doing enough to get by, but you're not really invested in your job.
That one I get.
Okay. Quiet cutting is a new thing that businesses are doing, where they're kind of firing people, but they're not making a big deal about it.
Right.
Well, lazy girl jobs, from what I've read, are jobs that require the least effort. Now, as I know that you very much study productivity, doing the least to get the most result isn't the end of the world. But but that's not 100% where they're going with this, if I read it correctly. It's more taking jobs that aren't going to get you far in a career, but provide you enough to live on.
And why would it be focusing on girls?
And
Because
therein lies the dilemma.
I believe there are lazy guy jobs too. And but I guess this gets a cutesy photo to go with it.
And that is what right, exactly. I do want to talk to you about work from home. I've thought a lot about it, and had I had that option, and it just wasn't a thing at that time. I mean, it was
well, I'm going to correct you. Lawyers work from home all the time, but that's in addition
Correct.
to their
That's right.
full day. Every time you prep for a trial, you're working all night, getting up in the morning, doing it again.
You're thinking about strategy in the shower.
That's
You are
right.
absolutely.
And can you bill for it?
That was always a question I just couldn't do it, but there were people who probably do.
Of
But
course.
I think that option could have been a game changer for me.
Well, it's certainly adding commute time, being able to work not wearing a full face of makeup or a suit. These are things, they sound minor, but when you add them up over 365 days a year, they add up. But going back to the Deloitte report, which tracks all the headlines right now about everyone being called back into the office 5 days a week, do people choose professions? Women choose professions. Are they going to choose professions that are more flexible? And therefore, you're decreasing the number of women in the other industries like finance, which is typically one that is requiring being in the office all the time. And maybe for valid reasons such as security and things like that. But really,
You mean they're all going to shift to lazy girl jobs and step out of the career, the hard pressed, demanding jobs that we fought to get into?
Well, you and I both had the same visceral response to the book, I Don't Know How She Does It, which was a cute movie. I didn't watch it, but it looked cute. But the problem with the book was it just sounded like drudgery. And when we're talking about happiness and sustainability and mental health and the happiness of your family, having the life that was depicted in that movie where you're too exhausted to engage in anything doesn't sound enjoyable, and it sounds like burnout. So how can we factor in, discuss all these factors and get more diversity in the workplace by allowing people maybe to have other options for working? Maybe it is 1 day a week work from home, or maybe it's a period of time. We know as attorneys, when you're on trial, you're going to have a period of time where you're working a lot. But it would be good then when you're not on trial, if you could maybe read transcripts at home or something like that.
It doesn't always work that neatly. And honestly, I still have not seen a solution for two people who have demanding, inflexible careers raising children.
And that's something that we plan on discussing in our book that we have been working on the outline for. What conclusions have we drawn after doing over 60 interviews? And in fact, it's more than that, because we started this program on local access television with panels of women who we haven't had as guests on the show, and discussing the things that we discuss. And what are our conclusions? It's a bit of social science. And I think at this point, some things have surprised us. Some things have been encouraging, like pivots at any age. I feel that if you want to do it, you can make it happen. You just have to be strong about it. But there's other things that are discouraging, which is having women staying in the workforce, not opting out. I think we've acknowledged that those are hardships that seem to be almost insurmountable for some people.
It's an ongoing discussion. I think that's really the best way to put it.
I've really enjoyed all of our guests, and I can't wait for the ones we have coming up.
Same. And I hope that you who are listening will tell us what you want us to talk about, or even who you want us to talk to, because we'll reach out and we will ask them to come on and join our discussion about the balance dilemma.
And why don't I tell our guests how they can reach us? They can find us on the web at thebalancedilemma.com, where you can listen to old episodes and sign up for our newsletter, find show announcements, show notes, resources, and further reading. You can also follow us on social media at The Balance Dilemma Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Let us know what you'd like to hear and what you'd like us to discuss through social media or by email at balancedilemma@gmail.com. podcast episodes are also available for listening on Apple, iTunes, Google, and Spotify, or on our website at thebalancedilemma.com. Please rate us and share us with your friends.
We really like to hear from you. We really do like feedback, and we take it seriously.
Yes,
So our next episode will be with Dr. Amy Deal,
that's right.
and we hope you'll join us then. For now, in The Balanced Dilemma, I'm Maura Carlin.
And I'm Christie Derrico. Thank you for listening.